and welcome back to Bean Talk. We have a guest here today with us in the studio. Welcome, Oliver.
Thank you.
Do you want to introduce yourself really quickly to our audience?
Hi, my name is Oliver. I'm working for WIEN KAFFEE, a roastery based in Vienna, and I have been doing that for more than a decade, which is about 13 years now, I think. And my line of job primarily is roasting, producing coffee, and what we call key account customers, which is basically everybody who has a coffee machine and makes coffee with it. So that's my line of work. And I've been in the last years I've been developing an interest in green coffee and coffee sourcing, and of course coffee roasting.
But you're something else as well. You're a Q grader, right?
Yep.
Can you?
Guilty as charged.
Can you tell us what a Q grader is and what Q graders do?
What a Q grader is and what Q graders do is easily explained. It's you have the official capacity sanctioned by the Coffee Quality Institute. That sounds great, doesn't it?
It really does.
To assess, to evaluate, and to officially score coffees on a scale of 0 to 100. I mean, I have never seen a coffee that scored 0, and I've never seen a coffee that scored 100. If there is a coffee out there, please to me. And so that's basically what you are allowed to do. You have to do a series of tests. Actually, it's 19 grueling tests during 1 week, one week of hell, I have to say. And it's kind of, basically coffee cupping, triangulations, organic acids and sensory skills, olfactory skills. You have to sort of, be tested on all of those, that the people at CQI can say, okay, this person seems to know a little bit about coffee, and of course, then you get the certificate, and as such, you are allowed to evaluate coffee and score it. Of course, the official score, it has to be done by 3 Q graders together, so it's not just one person. So it's 3 or more, and they can officially give a Q certificate, which means the coffee has been evaluated on the basis of green coffee, if there are any defects, and of course, sensory qualities and, roast profile and everything. So that's your work, and you can say, okay, this coffee is above 80, which would be specialty coffee, or this coffee is below 80. And you can do that for arabica, which most people do, and you can also do it for robusta, which is kind of the new sort of thing. Looking at climate change, robusta might be more interesting in the future. So that's kind of what I also am.
So you have both certificates?
Yes, I did both. I did arabica, and last year, just before the thing we're not allowed to mention started, I did the robusta in Switzerland. And I recently did the Q processing course too, and that sort of goes up into Q processing 2, where you spend a week in a coffee growing country and test it. And then Q processing 3, I think it's a year project, and you also have to develop your own coffee and experiment on that. So I did both, and I'm sort of interested in doing that, and doing more in that line, and maybe myself become an instructor in the future and get more people interested in becoming Q graders and assessing coffee, and of course having fun with coffee. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. The processing part, I think you might have to explain that a little bit more.
The processing part is because coffee doesn't arrive in a bag, sadly.
Yeah.
Beautiful bags here if you're interested. Coffee doesn't arrive in a bag. Of course, it's a drupe. A drupe. Yeah, beautiful word. It's a drupe. And as a drupe, it's hanging on a little coffee tree, and it has to be harvested and has to be treated, and you can do that with or without water. So there's different forms of processing.
Yeah.
There's natural, there's wash, there's all sorts of anaerobic craziness, beautiful craziness. And in order to know more about these processes and all the dangers and all the defects that can result from them, and how to avoid that, and how to best develop your coffee, the potential of your coffee, that's why you have a processing course, sort of, to get educated yourself, and then maybe later educate other people in how to process best their coffee.
Okay.
That's kind of hands-on thing, and the second course, the second processing level, takes part in a coffee growing country, and you're already sort of, they allow you to peek at it, and then if you do that right, if you don't destroy anything, they might let you near the coffee in the future. So, but that's interesting because coffee for me is not just just a bean. It's there's so much more, and so much more goes on with coffee before we as roasters get it here as green, and we don't see that. I mean, this is a huge amount of work that goes into a good, a well-grown bean that we don't see, and that's also interesting. That's like go to the roots and see what's happening there.
Yeah. We've heard already a little bit about talk to many different people in our show, and it's so interesting that everybody sort of brings that up, that there's so much more going into coffee than just the cup that you have on the table when you go into a coffee shop, or as a roaster, the bean that you get delivered in a bag. It is truly such a remarkable product. Why is it? Now, is every coffee evaluated?
Yes.
Every bag of coffee that is shipped out is evaluated by Q graders?
Should be. Of course, there are some commercial coffees that, somebody looks at it and says it's that, but usually you get a Q certificate for the coffees, especially those worth having, I mean, you wouldn't want to go around showing people your 72-point Q certificate for a coffee because it's not so good. But, I mean, if you have a coffee that's like 89 points, then of course you go around boasting, oh, this is a really good coffee, and this is what it is. And of course everybody is invited to grade it themselves. Just it's easy. Just get a cup and 8.75 grams of coffee and 150 milliliters of very hot water, and grind it coarsely and let it steep for 4 minutes, and then do all the things. It's on YouTube. It's easy to do a cupping, but I would really suggest everybody try that, because it really tells a lot about the coffee and the qualities. And of course, I wouldn't do that on an espresso roast because it brings out different qualities. It's more like filter roasts. But anyway, that's something that's really worth doing. And so, yes. Every coffee should have a Q certificate, but no, not every coffee will have one. And if you buy coffee commercially, of course, there's a huge backlog of things we don't see that go on in the exchanges, in the coffee exchanges, because they also need a basis, something to base their price on. But if I go and say, okay, I want some Colombian coffee for my commercial blend, then I'm not looking for a Q score. I'm just, okay, I've tested it, of course I've cupped it, but then of course I also made an espresso from it and said, okay, this is really nice for espresso. It's got that beautiful rubber charcoal, anyway, so, it depends what you're looking after. If you're looking for a commercial coffee, it's different. But if you're looking for the top, you would want to know the Q score, and the producer will always give it to you. Not only the producer, because the producers themselves, they're biased, of course. So they employ Q graders to say, okay, we independently have assessed this coffee and we believe that's that. And that's usually done also by the importer or the wholesaler, if you want.
How does the grading process, as somebody who's never seen something like that, and I'm sure a lot of our audience hasn't either, how does the grading process look like? Is that really 3 people in a room grinding the coffee, cupping it, or is there more that goes into it?
I think I would. There are some examples where that happens, but it's usually more Q graders. It's usually done not just one coffee, because like a huge quantity of coffee, and it's done blindly. So you don't know what you get. You get a coffee in a cup, and to quote my old and extremely wise Q grader instructor Mike Riley, you owe me for that, Mike. You owe me a bit. To quote Mike Riley, it's just cup what's in front of you, and that's what Q graders do. They don't know where it's from, what it is, what process. They just get a coffee and they say, okay, this is my score, and you evaluate it on a sheet, and it's got like 10 different criteria. You have fragrance, you have aftertaste, you have flavor, acidity and body and balance, and then you have attributes as sweetness, a clean cup, and all that, and overall impression. So there's some things that you have to sort of grade from 6 to 10. Well, theoretically from 0 to 10, but from 6 to 10, and you give it grades, and then you add it up in the end, and that's your score, and that's like done by a couple of people, and they all pool the scores, and then they say, okay, this is what it is. This is our Q score for that coffee. And of course, there are other labs that maybe give a second opinion, and then sort of this is how it's done. It's not an exact science, because everybody's flavor and sensory perception is different. That's why you need more than one, because one could really love a coffee very much, but the other would say, I don't really like it that much. So it's also personal preferences. Of course, at the end of the day, a Q grader is instructed and is educated in a way that she or he can give a rather unbiased, judgment. They don't say, oh, I love acidity and this is why this is 10 points. But they say, okay, the acidity is nice, but the body is lacking. And that's for Arabica. And Robusta is similar. It's a similar sheet, similar process. But instead of acidity and body and sweetness, you have mouthfeel, the sweet acid aspect ratio, and you have bittersweet aspect ratios. It's different ways of evaluating.
So you don't cup an Arabica coffee with the same...
No, it's a bit different,
yeah.
but it's the same setup really. It's not that much different, but it's different attributes because Robustas have less organic acids and as such have less acidity. Depends, Of course, we've had some Robustas like they blow you away. You wouldn't believe it's Robusta. Like there are Robustas out there. They are scarce and they're miles in between, but there are some Robustas out there that blow you away. Like Brazilian, usually some fermentation experiment, let's face it, some anaerobic craziness, but they're beautiful. But they're different kind of things. It's like white wine and red wine, but I wouldn't push this comparison.
Yeah.
It's, but it's different, but not so different. So of course, Robusta always has a bit more bitterness that it brings to the table, and also the roast level is different. Arabica is sort of light to medium, and Robusta, the cupping roast level is medium to medium dark.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Robusta is denser, so it needs a different roast to sort of assess it. So but it's basically the same way you do it.
Okay.
And then, of course, we haven't started, with the new varieties. Who isn't watching James Hoffmann, the Stenophila thing,
yes.
Which is, of course, due to climate change, because as we've heard, temperatures are rising.
We definitely have, and we've had just last week an interview with a climate expert who talked about exactly that because temperatures rise, we have to find a new way, a different solution probably in the future, and that there was a new variety discovered, right?
There's just hundreds of varieties. But this, the Stenophila, is now quite topical because it has different similar properties as Arabica does. So it's got the same acidity. It's sort of more interesting Robusta, in terms of flavor. Apparently, I'm still waiting on my sample.
I was just about to
I'm
ask.
still waiting on it. It's coming. I've of course reached out. And, I'm trying to get some interesting stuff to us. But it's a process that's already happening without us knowing it. And I'm talking to all the small roasters out there who just know about Arabica's good and Robusta's bad. It's not. It's different things. And you have Robusta already in your coffee. Because if you look at Arabica, it's Eugenioides on one hand and Canephora on the other. So Canephora is already in the lineage of Arabica. And then in the past, new hybrids have been developed, like the Catimor, which is a blend of the Híbrido de Timor, which is also kind of Robusta related. And all sorts of other, like the Ruiru 11, for example, which is in many Kenyan coffees now. There are examples of hybridizing Robusta into the Arabica line to get it more resistant, less susceptible to pests like the coffee rust, the coffee berry disease, the beetles, the borer beetles, and all sorts of other really horrible diseases that come up with climate change, with higher temperatures. Yeah. And Robusta has it easy because it grows on sea level and it doesn't mind the heat and doesn't really mind anything. It just grows, And Arabica is kind of like me. So there's
it's a diva.
Yeah, it's a diva, and of course we all like the divas because at the end of the day, there's sort of flash divas, but future might have some S graders, some Stenophila graders, who knows that. So there's changes coming, and I think it's best to just see what's coming, and cup what's in front of us.
So if there are S graders coming up, are you going to do that certificate as well?
Definitely, I'm there. I'm there.
Okay. I think that's it for today. We don't have much more time than that, but thank you so much for coming to the studio and having a chat with us.
You're welcome.
It was fascinating. Thank you for your cocktail as well. That was wonderful.
Yeah, can I just mention as an excuse to everybody who's watching this video, it was one take, it was the first take. I made many mistakes that of course are not shown on camera, and please be gentle with me, and if you try it yourself, if you've any like 40 or 50-year-old whiskey lying around at home, bring it to me, don't mix it in a cocktail. I'm just saying. It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek kind of, it's a great cocktail, but it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, because because I've talked to many of those, coffee and good spirits people, and they always sound about, I just used ingredients that I could get in a local supermarket because, that's the way I am, and that's the way I was. No, use extra fine ingredients. Use 50 grams of stenophylla that you paid £2,000 for. Use the best of the best, because we can have we've had some pretty bad times now, and I think we really deserve, we've really earned our craziness now. So.
Yeah, on that note, have a wonderful day.
You too.
And thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And to all of you, have a wonderful week. We'll see you next week with another show. Until then, drink loads of great coffee, and bye.